Right, so we're gonna scan for some codes to see if we get anything. Customer said the vehicle is still having issues starting. Right, 1 minute it starts, 1 minute it doesn't. Right, so we got this Nissan Sylphy here, 2006 model, I believe. Right, so customer states that the vehicle is sometimes cranks and start and sometimes it doesn't. Right, and if I could check it out for them. So what I did when I came on to the vehicle, I checked for fuel, I checked for spark. Right, I was there, so I just serviced the master fuel real quick, but still nothing. Right. It's cranking, but it's not starting. So the next thing I'm gonna do is just pop on the scan tool, see if I can get some direction on, on our approach, so I could develop our approach to see if I can assist with this diagnosing. So let me go and get the scan tool and hook it up. I said 1 minute it starts, 1 minute it doesn't. I'm gonna go straight to the ECM. Yeah, as you see, no fault codes. So let's read some data stream. No check light is on. What do we need? What will we pull up? Engine speed. The only thing I got is RPM. I'm not seeing no crank and cam info. Load signal. What else could cause a crank? No start. Actually, it wasn't even cranking at times. It sounded like it's like if the vehicle, the starter was giving an issue, but it wasn't. But it starts now. Like if you go to start the vehicle, it starts right up now. And then like if you let it sit for a bit, it won't start. So I'm gonna come right back out on the scan tool. Right, let's come straight back out on the scan tool. It's not spark, it's not fuel, it's not compression, it's not even air. Basically you're getting a no crank. You're getting a crank, no start. Like the vehicle will just start cranking and won't start. So I'm gonna go after the crank sensor. I might see anything. Engine speed. I'm not seeing anything with cam and crank. Alright, let's try to crank this vehicle and see if we get engine RPM. So now the vehicle starts. So we are getting engine RPM. I don't want to throw parts, but the customer insists that we change it out because she's just fearful that it's going to do the same thing again, like when it returns. So what am I supposed to do? Change it, I guess. But let's, at least before I change it, let's do some tests real quick on the cam and the crank to verify what at least is working, I'm gonna pull away the scan tool because there's nothing we can get from the scan tool right now. And we're gonna pull out our voltmeter and just take some measurements real quick before we replace the parts. Let me set it up. Alright, so what we're going to do is run through some documents before we change out the crank and the cam sensor. Alright, so we're going to check this is a Hall effect, right? So this have 3 wires going to it, right, which is a sensor ground, 5-volt ref, and a power supply, right, coming from the ECU. Alright, so I'm going to hook up my voltmeter and check make sure I'm getting all those voltage like I'm supposed to, right? I'm gonna unplug it. Actually, you could do it when the car is running, but I'm gonna unplug it first to see what's going on, right? And make sure I'm getting what I'm supposed to get from the ECU. So with it, we're gonna do the cam sensor first with the jack unplug. right? I'm supposed to get 5-volt ref, supposed to also get a sensor ground and a sensor signal, right? What I'm gonna have to do also is stress the 5-volt ref and make sure that the 5-volt ref doesn't drop below 5 volts, right? If it drops below 5 volts, I mean I have a voltage drop somewhere that's pulling on the 5-volt ref and it's not supposed to, right? But you gotta do that when the car is cranking, right? So I got my little jig hook up, right, where I have no one here to help me. So I'm gonna crank it like this with key on, right? And monitor my signal with my voltmeter, right? So after I do that, right, I'm gonna do the same thing on the crank, right? And also I gotta on the crank sensors, on the crank sensor is being, matter of fact, let's check this out. On the cam sensor, right, you notice is basically going from the ECU to the sensor. That's all it is, right? So if you look here, I'm going to zoom in real closer, right? So this is from the ECU. Here I'm getting sensor ground, I'm getting my signal, and I'm also getting my 5-volt ref. On the cam sensor, let's go straight to the cam sensor, right? So I know what I'm supposed to get on the cam. But if we go on the crank sensor, let's see if I have that drawing from the printout. Oh no, I don't. Right, on the crank sensor is being shared by, on that signal you have, is being shared by other sensors, right? So I gotta make sure that the 5-volt ref is standing up like it's supposed to. I don't think the 5-volt ref is the issue here because, as I said, the vehicle starts, but when it starts, it runs really good, and once in a while it doesn't, right? So, but as I said, it's not, it won't hurt to check, right? So if you notice here, it's also saying that the, let's get a little closer, right? It's saying the 5-volt ref for the crank sensor is being shared by the thermal control, the pressure, the refrigerant pressure sensor, the crank sensor, position sensor, the evap, and the APP terminal. So those are on the same circuit as the crank sensor, right? And I got those highlighted. So basically, you gotta be with the key on. You're supposed to be seeing 5 volts on these sensors. So say for instance, like my 5-volt ref was giving trouble, right? And I checked my 5-volt ref and it, like I was seeing like 4 volts here, right? What I have to do is go and unplug each sensor here until my 5-volt ref comes up, and whatever sensor that I unplug is the one that's giving trouble, right? But as I said, I don't think that's the problem in this situation, right? I believe that it is a bad sensor. I mean, the customer already purchased the sensor. There's a number, right? But which is a crank and a cam, so I'm gonna just do my checks before I replace it for him, right? So let me set you up on the vehicle, and you can just take a glimpse of how I not diagnose, but how I do my check before I replace them. The first thing we're gonna do, right? I'm gonna put the key on. Right, key is on. I got my multimeter on, right, on DC voltage. I got my lead hooked onto my COM lead hooked onto my battery negative, right? I'm gonna do my checks on the cam sensor first, right? So we're gonna just probe this lightly, back probe one of the wires. This is the red wire. And right now I'm just making sure that I'm in, right? I'm going to touch battery voltage first, make sure I have over 10 volts, so I'm getting 12.13. Next I'm going to just touch, so right now this have to be sensor ground, right? I'm getting 0. Let's go into the next pin. right? I'm getting 0.03 volts. I'm going into the next pin. And I'm getting 0.12 volts. Right, so that's with the sensor plug in, right? So what I gotta do next is I'm gonna check to see if it's a pull up or is a pull down circuit, right? So if I unplug the jack, right, the harness, and I check again, right, and I see that the voltage comes up, that means this was a pull down circuit, right? So we're just gonna unjack here, and we're gonna just gently front probe the pin, right? So in this first one, this slightly touch, I'm getting 5 volts, right? I'm going to probe the next one. I'm getting 0.29, which will have to be the sensor ground, right? So anything under 100 millivolts. And I'm going to probe the next pin, and I'm getting 5 volts, right? So this is a pull down circuit, right? And basically the ECU will send out the 5 volt ref, and with how the sensor is made up, it will pull the circuit down, right? So I gotta do the same thing on the crank sensor also, right? What we could do, we could test it and stress it, but by stressing the 5 volt and make sure it stand up. But I'm gonna go on the vehicle and do the same thing on the crank sensor, or I can take it from by the ECU, right? Let's see what else can I check while I'm up here. Yeah, this coil is in the way. It's kind of hard to probe. Let's see what else is on that system. They say the pressure switch. Pressure switch will be on the AC line, right? So it's on the AC line. It'll be on the high side. Oh, it's down on by the hose. Right, so on the pressure switch, we got it plugged in. Let's see. Let me see if I can get my hands here. Right, so right now it's plugged in. Right, I'm on one jack. No, I'm not. I don't have the length. Let's set you up here so I can still get access to it. Right, so I'm probe into one of the pins. Key on, engine off. Is the key on? Yeah, the key is on. Alright, so I'm plugged in. I'm getting 0. Plugged in. Let's try the next one. I'm getting 1 volt. Let's try the next one. And I'm getting 5 volt, right? So I'm getting signal. I'm getting 5 volt ref. I'm getting ground, right? So let's unplug the pressure sensor here. Right out here. Right, let me just show you where the sensor is located. If you see down there on the condenser, is right there. So I'm just gonna put you back where the camera is. Sorry about that. Right, so you just keep your eye on the camera. I mean on the multimeter, and I would probe. So right now that is on plug. Right, I'm gonna measure the first jack. I'm getting 0. The next one, I'm getting 0. And the next one, I'm getting 0. So What that means? This means that this is a pull up circuit. Right, so basically, hold on, let me bring it closer. That means this is a pull up circuit, right? That when the jack is plugged in, it comes up, right? So probably like a duty cycle or a pulse width, right? Yeah, sorry about that noise in the background. Alright, so next thing I'm going to do is, so according to the diagram, not even diagram, paperwork, sorry, ignition on, and basically I'm supposed to get 5 volts on my sensing wire. Yeah. So it's in accordance to what it says, the tumble control. Basically, remember I was getting 0 volts. Let's try it again. It's plugged in right now. And the tumble control, but plugged in, I'm getting 0. And I'm getting 0. So the tumble control and the pressure sensor is on the same circuit, and I'm getting 0 volts while it's plugged in. But when I plug it real quick, now unplug it, right, with the tumble control. Let me show you the tumble control is. It's right over, it's right here. This tumble control. Right, so with the tumble control unplug, right, and I'm touching the wires. Let's see what we get. Right, I'm getting 3 millivolts, 30 millivolts, 30 millivolts. So this is a pull up. So the question is, am I going to see a pull up also on the crank sensor? Because according to the paperwork here, it said that the crank, the power, the thermal control, the pressure sensor, and the crank sensor is on the same circuit. Alright, so the crank sensor is basically getting the signal off the flywheel, which is under the vehicle, between the, right under the manifold, the exhaust manifold. So let me just set you all up properly so y'all can see the meter while I'm doing my checks. Alright, so with the key on, engine off, I'm just gonna probe the sensor. The back of the sensor is plugged in right now. Kind of hard to see where I'm probing. Alright, you got 3 wires. The wires is kind of brittle, so I don't want to, move it too much to damage the harness. Let me see if I can. I should have really jacked this car up a little bit more than I did, so I can see. That's the good thing about having a lift. Oh man, this jack is brittle. Alright, so I'm back probing to one of the pins. Key is on, and just touched it. So I'm getting basically 11 millivolts on one. I'm going into the next one, which is the middle pin. Oh man, this thing is really brittle. I don't think I can do this, fellas, because I don't want to go through this. I wonder if I can use my piercing tool. When it's wake up like this, that means you gotta do some repairs, and I'm really not in the mood to do that now. So I'm back probing the next one. Let's see what I'm getting. I'm getting a ground, and the middle one. Let's see what I'm getting here. So I'm getting no voltage here either. So right, so this definitely is a pull up circuit on the crank sensor. Let's see if I can remove this jack without breaking it and giving me more work. Probably need to just take off the 10 bolt so I can get access and pop it out. So let me just take the key off real quick.